Okay, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, everyone, and welcome from wherever you're joining. And it's very great to have you on the broadcast here today. My name is Maimuna Kabatesi. I'm a project manager at HIVOS East Africa. I'm based in Nairobi, and I'll be the moderator for this session today. So we're here today to discuss redefining funding for CSOs in light of our new reality dealing with the effects of COVID-19. As you definitely know, COVID-19 has affected literally every aspect of our lives, both personal and professional, and many organizations and institutions have had to make significant changes when it comes to ways of working, when it comes to the strategies and the approaches. For civil society, there have been and will continue to be impacts on funding sources. We already know that we are being impacted and we foresee this continuing. And as governments, development partners, MDBs, and multilateral organizations also continue to adjust to reflect the new needs brought on by the pandemic. I think one thing that we do not see is funding or strategic responses that are responding directly to energy needs, whether the needs of citizens or of organizations working on renewable energy. Despite the clear linkage between vulnerability to respiratory illness and access to clean cooking, or the need for energy to support the health sector when it comes to storage of medicines and vaccines, among many other necessities and needs of citizens, we do not see explicit support to the renewable energy sector. In order to understand the effects on CSOs working in this sector, Access, which is the Alliance of CSOs for Clean Energy Access, a global coalition of over 75 CSOs, has taken steps to understand how its members were affected. Today's webinar is going to be focusing on sharing the findings from a survey conducted by Access about the effects of COVID-19 on its members. We'll also hear from sector experts some reflections on what we can expect in the funding environment for renewable energy organizations now and in the future. Today, the program will be as follows. We're going to hear from Access Learning Group member Kevin Johnston about the genesis and execution of the work, understanding the effects of COVID on Access members. And then Jacqueline, who is the international coordinator at Access, will give an introduction to Access work and members. We'll then have 3 CSO members from Malawi, Sierra Leone, and Colombia sharing their experiences and their reality in their countries and in their regions. And finally, we'll have reflections on financing options from two sector experts. As you can see on your screen right now, the people speaking today will be Kenneth from Renew Enable Malawi, Lillian, who is a coordinator at Red Bio Colombia, William Brent, Chief Campaign Officer at Power for All, Mariama Kamara, who is the founder and director of Smiling Through Light, and Jens Jäger, who is Policy and Business Development at ARE, which is the Alliance for Renewable Energy. We will have time for a short Q&A at the end. Please ensure you're typing your questions if you do have any questions that come up in the box, and please write to whom you're addressing the question to enable us to be efficient in executing this. During the webinar, we'll also have a number of polls that will be deployed so we can understand some of the needs of you, the audience today, and some of the effects of COVID on you as the audience. So please ensure that you're participating in that, and we'll be sharing the results immediately. So now, without further ado, I'm going to invite Kevin to speak. Kevin Johnston leads the Access Learning Group, and he's the Energy Access Specialist and works at IIED, which is the International Institute for Environment and Development. Kevin, I'm going to invite you to take the floor and give us the introduction to the Access Learning Group. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maimuna. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. As Maimuna mentioned, I work at the International Institute for Environment and Development, IIED, and I co-lead the learning group under Access with Johanna from the Wuppertal Institute. The learning group is a voluntary set of 5 Access member NGOs and institutes, and our aim is to strengthen Access members' skills and capacity to deliver on the promise of SDG 7's Energy for All. And we do this through technical support to Access activities and other learning events such as this webinar to engage Access members. The learning group is interested in expanding our numbers, specifically with CSOs from African countries that are particularly motivated to support the learning group's efforts under Access. If your CSO is interested, I'll add my email to the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me directly. The Learning Group has been working behind the scenes to support Jacqueline and Edith's implementation of the Survey of Access members that's being presented today. And that's all from me. And I will now hand over to Jacqueline to present some of the highlights from the survey. Jackie?
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thanks to everyone who has joined us today for this brief webinar. I'm going to take you through the survey that we conducted in the month of June. And in the next 5 minutes, I will also bring the key highlights from the survey. And by way of introduction, Access is a global coalition of CSOs working in energy access space. Basically, members are based in Sub-Saharan Africa, but we also have other members based in Latin America and also Southern Asia. So our key focus are 3 key work streams. First, we're working with the World Bank and the AFDB to influence increased investments in energy access in Sub-Saharan Africa, and also to see how CSOs can be participating in the bank's processes. We're also working to implement SDG 7 in Sub-Saharan Africa again, but also with a focus on the Latin America and also in Asia. So then also the other thing is on knowledge management and capacity building, which Kevin has just talked about. So basically, in a brief, that is Access, and you can find more information about us in our website. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yes, so as mentioned before, we did this survey in collaboration with the Access Learning Group in the month of June, and we had over 25 organizations that responded to the survey, and these organizations were spread across 18 countries globally, with some of NGOs in the global north also participating on behalf of their partners and members based in Africa. And the focus was specifically on energy access and also on climate change advocacy. This survey will help us identify the priority areas that the Access Learning Group can tap into and help Access members in terms of capacity strengthening and also in terms of knowledge brokering. So after this, we're going to sort of identify the priority areas that have been highlighted by the CSOs, and then we can adapt that to strengthen the capacity of the CSOs. From the survey, yes, many of the CSOs have been affected by the current situation of COVID-19, and we can see that most people have cancelled their activities, their planned activities. Others have been delayed. There has also been issues of financial issues and the challenge in securing funding, and we can see that some members, some organizations have had to, lay off their workers due to the challenges in financing and also due to the cancellation of activities. We note that most of the members were actually moderately affected. We didn't have CSOs who closed their organization, but from the survey it indicated that yes, all Access members and other CSOs were moderately affected by the COVID-19. Next slide, please. Yeah, so CSOs highlighted ways in which they are coping, and one of the key things that was really highlighted was the use of online platforms like what we are doing now, given that there are restrictions in terms of holding activities like the workshops and trainings and whatever. Members have resorted to online platforms. Others have revised their planned activities and budgets, which have also delayed their activities. Others are taking the necessary precautions to cope with the situation and continue working, and then others have sort of adjusted their activities to fit in the country's restriction, and also using local partners in the field to help in implementing the activities because of the travel restrictions, the travel bans. And one of the challenges that was actually one of the things that the members highlighted is the use of the online platforms. We also noted that energy power is an issue. in most of the countries that responded to the survey, and we note that there has been unreliable internet connection in those countries. We also noted the issue of insufficient financing for data, airtime, and whichever. And then others also are trying to sort of understand the different online platforms and how they work. It's a technology issue, and then also the issue that we are talking about on insufficient access to power and power outages in most of sub-Saharan Africa. And you can see that 75% of the respondents say that they are able to use the online platforms, and the 25% cannot use that. So the question is, how do we get the 25% to adapt to the current situation, and also ensure that they continue to play their role as CSOs in advocacy? Go on, next slide, please. So given the challenges that we have just highlighted in the previous slides, we also wanted to know how are the donors and funding engines also taking this? How are CSOs responding to this? And donors communicating to the CSOs, there are funding opportunities that CSOs can tap into in the light of the current pandemic. So what we found out was that yes, the donors are really engaging with their partners, that is the CSOs. They're holding, some virtual meetings to discuss program updates, discussions to know how the work plans can be reviewed, and also discussions in terms of how they can mitigate this and ensure that the work continues. And then we also found out that majority of the CSOs are not aware of the funding opportunities that are in place in regards to COVID-19, and and the funds that are available are not focusing on advocacy work. So, like really seeing how can advocacy work be given prominence in the light of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So in terms of how Access can add value in the work, we want to continue working with the Access members and other CSOs across the globe. And CSOs really highlighted that there is need for securing funding for members, also advocacy to recognize energy access in the fight against COVID, also issues to do with strengthening knowledge and capacity in terms of the linkage between energy and COVID-19, and also sharing the work of members widely, because most of the members are doing very good work in terms of ensuring energy access, in-person access for all, but yet this work is not out there to provide learnings for other people. So as I end my presentation, I want to say that Access Coalition is really ready to work with Access members and see how we can add value to your work, not only in this time of the pandemic, but also going forward to ensure that we achieve universal energy access by 2030. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the insight, Jackie. So on screen now is the membership base for Access, so 75 members. And if you are interested in joining, if your CSO is not yet a member of Access, you can always get in touch with Jackie. I hope she will share her email in the chat box to enable everyone to reach. For now, I'm going to launch the first poll, which is about the COVID-19 regulations in your country at the moment, just for us to understand how the situation looks like, because we have people from quite a few different countries online right now. So you should see the poll on your screen, and it's how are the COVID-19 regulations in your country. There is a total lockdown. There's people able to work from home. Are you able to actually go back to the office and restart activities, or were you actually hardly affected? I'm just going to leave this on to enable a few people to, I see people are still responding. All right, just a few more seconds. And please remember, if you have any questions, to be putting them in the question box as well, and mention to whom you're directing your question. Okay, it's been about a minute, so I'm going to close this poll and let everyone see the results. So right now, we see that the majority of people are working online from home. I think that's just the main reality for a lot of us, trying to avoid increasing our risk. Quite a few people, quite a large percentage, 40% are back after lockdown and can restart activities, which is also great to hear. I suppose it's very geographically dependent. 12% of people online who have taken part in the poll are in total lockdown, not able to work at all, and 4%, which is really the minority, didn't have to change activities much. So I suppose things just went on as normal. Thank you so much for participating. As I said, these will be deployed all through, but for now, I'd like to invite the first of our speakers from civil society to give us the presentation. Ranisha, could you do the next slide? So I would like to invite Mariama Kamara, who is the founder and director of Smiling Through Light, which provides clean, reliable, and sustainable energy in Sierra Leone, to take the stage. Mariama, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mamune. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much to Access Coalition for this invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all. I really hope everyone's keeping safe during this difficult and challenging time. So my name is Mariama Kamara. I'm the founder and director of Smiling Through Light. So Smiling Through Light focuses on clean energy access. We work with a network of local women to provide clean, reliable, and sustainable energy in Sierra Leone through the distribution and sales of solar products, focusing on the last mile. Our journey started in 2011, and we've been doing a lot of work within the country to date. So it's really nice to actually have William from Power for All on the panelist, because Power for All actually done a lot of work in Sierra Leone around the 2015, 2016 time. In 2016, our government signed the first Energy Compact Agreement, which was a lot of work, which then started the whole energy revolution in Sierra Leone. So for the last couple of years, civil society, entrepreneurs, businesses, we've been really active and pushing forward. We had a strong campaigns manager on the ground who worked for Power for All, who really pushed things forward. I'll just give you some impact on our work to date. So to date, we've created 11 full-time jobs. So Smiling Through Light is really around job creation and income opportunities. Through that, we've been able to help all our staff open bank accounts, have social security numbers, and empowering them as clean energy leaders. To date, we've sold 812 out of 850 products. We have a great client presence in Sierra Leone. And with that, we've reached over 7,308 people who are now able to access clean energy products instead of using kerosene. We do a lot of community work through storytelling. So we understand that the rural communities that we work with, a lot of people have really low literacy levels. So we've developed stories where we use storytelling to talk about clean energy access. And to date, we've trained over 800 people. Because of the work we do, all our female agents, all our sales agents are female, and we understand a lot of the cultural barriers that's linked to that. So we have programs called Husband Champions programs, where we train the husbands of our female agents so they can understand that the work we're doing and also the benefits for their wives. And we plan to roll this program out, because we know one of our biggest risks are part of our products going missing. If a husband of one of our sales agents tells her to stop working, she would. So we definitely believe that we have to actively engage men in every single area of our work. We've also developed loads of governance and reporting processes and key policies to make sure we function very well, that we have a structured business in Sierra Leone, because in terms of funding, a lot of donors are always asking these types of questions. So that would also be a quick tip to everyone. Make sure you have a really good structure in place, get advisory board members who can support the activities that you're currently doing on the ground. For us, like everybody else, COVID's been really challenging. But as the survey showed, our staff has shown such resilience, you know, and I think that goes with the vision of the work we're doing. The staff, you know, are part of a whole team. The business is theirs, they run it. So they've carried on to work in really, really difficult situations. So for example, our cash flow has been really low. We've had some delays with salary payment and transportation, but overall, our main thinking as a business has been the safety of our staff, especially our female agents who are out and about in different communities. As the topic is on funding, I will just close before we go into Q&A to first of all say SDG 7 that we all work in, it's all around access to clean energy. By 2030, we all want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal, Goal 7, which also says that no one should be left behind. But I'm feeling in terms of all the local organizations, especially grassroots organizations on the continent, we have been left behind. And in my position, I don't think we would ever achieve the SDG 7 if community organizations, if local businesses do not play an active role within this whole funding pipeline and within the sector of energy. Secondly, for funding, we need much more transparency. From Smiling Through Light, we've found and work that we've been doing that we really don't know where the funding is going. The funding, which is not a big elephant in the room, we can all see it's particularly targeted at the bigger organizations. So it seems within the sector, there's a club because it's always the same people that's receiving the funding. A lot of the small organizations would get funding to do training and capacity building, but how long would you keep training people for? How long would you be giving small grants to train people? People need to get the skills, but you have to implement it through the different activities that they're doing within their workplace. So for us, we're calling for more transparency. Where is the funding going? Who is getting it? And we actually need to address that gap and fill it. There's also the question of privilege within the sector, which I actually have been thinking about, because I know smaller organizations get a lot of challenge in terms of you need to make sure your books are in order. You need to have your structures. The criteria for a lot of this funding, for a lot of the grants, is quite stringent, it's quite challenging. And sometimes most of these grants are released for them to show it's out there. But within it, I'm sure a lot of times it's been identified where the money is going. So for me, it's all around transparency in funding. And overall, for us to work and operate in just an equal, fair and transparent world as we work towards achieving SDG 7. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mariama, for that, and for speaking about your experiences, your organization on the funding, but also about the sector. That's actually a good segue into our next poll, which is about the identification of financial sources. So for you, the audience, tell us today, what type of offers have you seen in this COVID times? Project funding, technical support, loans for small NGOs, which that's $5,000 to $10,000, or other sources of funding. If it's other, please could you mention in the chat box what they are? And this is a two-part poll, so I'll end it so that we can go into the next part as well. Okay, I'm just going to close this poll and share the responses that we have so far. Please remember again, if you voted other, to mention in the chat what are the other sources that you saw. So I'm just going to close this now and share the results. So you can see the majority of funding that has been seen by the audience today is project funding. There's also people, that's 48%, and then we see 39% of the audience today has seen offers for technical support. There hasn't been no one has identified loans for small NGOs, and other 13%, just a reminder on the request. And I'm just going to go to the next part of the poll, which is about, for you, the audience today, did you apply to any of these offers that you saw? This is simple yes or no. So please vote. I hope you can see it on your screen. Okay, we have the votes coming in. All right, I'm just going to give it a few more seconds. And I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. So we have a 50-50 split. A few of you have applied and a few of you have not. It would be great also if you could hear at some point why you didn't apply. But for the resources that you did see, you can share them to communications@access-coalition.org. And that way Access will be able to share this with our members. Again, if you're also interested in joining Access or learning more about Access, you can also email communications@access-coalition.org. I would now like to give, Ranisha, next slide, please. Give the floor to the next speaker, Kenneth Mtago from Renew Enable Malawi. Kenneth is the advocacy officer at Renew Enable Malawi. He supports advocacy for various networks in the renewable energy sector in Malawi. Kenneth, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maimuna, and greetings to all, because we are got a different time zone. And first of all, I am Kenneth Mtago, as Maimuna has already alluded to. Renew Enable Malawi, it's a Malawian-based organization focused on renewable energy. The name derives from our aim to enable Malawians to renew lifestyle based on renewable, greener and more efficient energy sources. So LENAMA contribute to the reduction of energy poverty in Malawi. And our observations mainly looking at energy poverty is the main factor that hinder people from transforming poverty into life beyond their existence. So most of our work is normally focused on development of strong, transparent and diverse energy sector with active information sharing and best practices, as well as informing the stakeholders. So Malawi access in terms of percentage is 12% got access to grid electrification, and with much advocacy and engagement, we have seen the growing from 2% to 6% in terms of solar and other sources, which is a milestone. And regards to the situation currently in Malawi, few CSO have taken seriously to work on issues to do with energy, and mostly as Renew Enable Malawi further partners have been working to make sure that non-energy CSOs understand that energy play a bigger role in influencing development changes. So in terms of COVID-19, which has affected a number of civil society organizations in Malawi, there has been also some measures that have been considered as effective as far as implementation is concerned. And most of CSOs have opted for online meetings, which we as Renew Enable Malawi also did at some point in time. And the employees working from home, because we haven't yet faced the lockdown, as Malawi has just come from elections in June. There was like political tension, issues to do with COVID. So it was very much difficult for civil society to understand. But lucky enough, a few businesses were happening, but with measures into play. And also we are able to adhere to national preventive measures by government on COVID-19. This includes the gathering of less than 20, 50 and 100 people according to the nature of the activity that you want to embark, and with an observation in terms of physical distancing. And for us, we have done much in terms of making people aware and sharing information. So our main platform, we moved from engaging people at one place. We went further to make sure that we use online, and also we engage the media. But even though we engage the media, even though we were using different platforms, still energy poverty is high in Malawi. We are failing to reach those people in the rural setup, which are far from grid education. And when we are using WhatsApp or when using other sources, people in the rural sector, they don't have access to that. And these are the critical people that we want them to have access to clean energy. So it has been so challenging. And in terms of people getting products that we feel can reduce energy poverty, it has been so challenging, whereby those living in a rural setup, they have been denied an opportunity. Regardless of that, there's been an effort for government to remove VAT on solar and other products, but that also has seen some few mini-grids be in place, but still in terms of access to those that are far from the mini-grid, it's so challenging with the COVID-19. But there has been a private partnership in a major ways to achieve the affordable clean energy for all. But still with the COVID-19 and the measures in place, it has been so challenging for us to make sure that people that are seriously looking to access these technologies should access. So at the moment, even though we are using the different platforms, but we feel those critically looking forward to access the energy products are denied the opportunity. In terms of support towards COVID-19, it has been so challenging. Yes, I'm winding up. In terms of funding, it has been so challenging for available resources so that we can cope up with the COVID-19 situation that we are in. Thank you so much, Mamuna. That's the contribution from Malawi.
Great, thank you so much. It's interesting to hear about the experiences with the VAT in different countries as well. We've had our challenges with that in Kenya. I would now like to hand over straight away to Lilian Rodriguez. Lilian is an active member of grassroots organizations, an independent consultant and a researcher. She's representing Red Bio Call, Colombia on behalf of Hydro Empowerment, and Red Bio LAC, which is Visions Practitioners Network. Lilian is going to be sharing experiences from Latin American and Southern Asian CSOs. So Lilian, over to you.
Okay, good morning to everybody. I am representing 4 networks: Red Bio Call, Red Bio LAC, that is a Latin American network, Hydro Empowerment Network, and Wind Empowerment, practitioner network working with grassroots level, multi-stakeholders, peasant, indigenous, Afro communities, organizations, universities, technological institutes, our producers, processors, and consumers, neighbor committees, urban and rural, and social movements. We have been working on sustainable energy for over 10 years, maybe, and we can highlight that we are with local enablers. The technology we work is high biomass production, biogas gasification, solar energy, clean cooking stoves, local promoters, pico, micro, and mini hydro, and wind. As you know, we understand that we have had problems with this pandemic, and we have detected that the main difficulty is the food security, marketing, and transportation of products. We have been able to work together to solve some situations, local situations, but this is a big constraint. The main challenge of CSOs is to understand that energy solutions are integral for life, for processes, for production, processing, and education, connectivity, very important in these times, transportation of supplies, and also for the well-being. When the role of energy is understood as part of sustainable lifestyle, it's easier to generate solutions. We have a lot of problems with the funding, but we understand that the organization, the donor community, should focus on giving resources to organizations that are part of networks, like these networks we are talking about, that the funds can be invested in families, in the grassroots organizations, that can be ensure the multiplication of these funds through some processes like revolving funds, as we have in our networks, that economic funds should be invested in integrated energy solutions. That is very important. That the projects involve many organizations and the issues of gender and generation and different methodologies like sustainable lifestyle schools, workshops, and preparations of promoters in sustainable renewable energy. That the funds strengthen and expand successful ongoing processes, and the funds provide the opportunity to generate policies from the grassroots organizations. The position should be a work hand by hand with the donor community. There are many activities that can be done without financial resources, and these activities usually are part of the strengthening of the social process. Energy issues are not only technological issues, are social issues. This is very important. The projects should tackle the inequity and to solve situations like now. The emergency funds were delivered to the banks and large units. So there are not so many resources available for grassroots organizations. So through this work, joint work, we can tackle this problem. It's important to generate spaces like this webinar to think about this situation. And it's clear that we need, we face a big challenge to continue our work, and we need funds to improve connectivity. We don't have internet in rural areas, is something that is common. We need solar energy, smart cell phones, tablets, and data charge in the grassroots organizations. Funds are needed to generate virtual material to be able to share all these very good experiences we have available in the grassroots organizations. Funds should be invested to articulate activities at national and regional level to market products coming from systems where renewable energy is used, where we also focus in waste to energy use, waste to produce energy. This is very important. The challenges are not so different than before. What is clear is the problem. The problems of society have been highlighted with this pandemic, and that crisis is opportunity because now is more awareness of people. We would think that in general donors do not really keep us informed, or we don't know. We are part of a group working with visions, and then we are here talking about these aspects. And our experience is that if we have conviction, enthusiasm, and energy from each of the persons forming the organizations of our network is clear, we have it, and we will be able to continue, adapt, and ensure keeping the track to set targets and programs. It's important to understand that most of the finance is directed toward external actors, which ultimately strengthen the existing power structure. So we need to change this situation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that reflection from the grassroots organizations and about the scale of the funding available and how important it is that it addresses all levels and not just the large scale levels. So we are going to move, Ranisha, next slide, please. We're going to move to now hearing about the finance options. It's my pleasure to introduce William Brent, who is the Chief Campaign Officer at Power for All. He's been working at the intersection of climate solutions and integrated marketing and communications for nearly 2 decades. William, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, and greetings to everyone, and thanks to the Access Coalition for including us in this important webinar. A quick word about Power for All. As many of you may know, we're an international NGO focused on legitimizing and accelerating the role of decentralized renewable energy solutions, not only within the energy sector, but also within the sectors that benefit from these types of renewable energy solutions: healthcare, education, agriculture, and food. We're now more than 300 organizations part of our network, and really work using evidence to inform the advocacy and education work that we're doing to inform better policy making and better financial investment decisions when it comes to energy infrastructure. So Obviously, we are very concerned by the current COVID crisis, as are our partners across the network. And as I think many of you may know, there have been several surveys done of the various companies working in the sector. The latest statistic that I've seen is that 29% of those companies have ceased operations. Another 75% have said that they have less than 3 months of runway based on their cash availability. So these are very trying times for everybody, not just our sector, but globally and across multiple sectors. That said, we are facing a very challenging moment in time. And in terms of responding to that challenge, there are a number of different initiatives that have come up almost organically. I want to reiterate the point that Mariama made earlier, that it's really been amazing to see all of the different organizations across the sector come together to try and meet this challenge together in a very self-organized, organic way, and kudos to all of those organizations who've been on the front line of that work. Where we are today is, essentially I would break the relief effort on the financial front into two parts. One is new support, that's new money and technical assistance that's coming into the sector, and the second is reallocating existing support, also capital and technical assistance. The new support has basically been in the form primarily of a $100 million relief fund that's a concessionary debt fund. And that is, I think currently they're almost ready to have what they call a first close of $35 million. The target date for that is the end of July. That concessionary debt fund is as you would imagine, low interest loans to existing companies who meet certain criteria. In the case of this debt fund, the criteria are actually quite high in terms of the amount of capital you're asking for. I believe it's somewhere in the range of $200,000. So many of the companies in our sector who are medium and small enterprises can't take on that kind of debt as young companies. And so this concessionary fund is very important for more mature companies, but it is inaccessible to many of the smaller companies. And so as a result of that reality, a separate effort has been undertaken by Power for All and partners, including the Alliance for Rural Electrification, when Jens is speaking as well, to create a $35 million grant fund. And $10 million of that grant fund would go towards supporting the larger $100 million concessionary debt fund in terms of first loss capital, but $25 million of the grant fund would be used specifically to support the MSMEs in our sector who badly need support, as do the more mature companies. So those are the two main efforts to unlock new capital. I would say that there's been initial success with the concessionary debt fund, still a gap to fill in terms of closing out that first close. The grant fund has met with very limited support to date. And that's a major red flag and something that needs to be addressed, because clearly the MSMEs are the majority of the companies working in our sector and need as much as anybody, if not more so, these trying times. There are also other smaller initiatives from Get Invest and their Finance Catalyst. AECF has a Kenya Relief Fund that's been announced as well. So there's smaller, more localized efforts that are also being communicated and being deployed. And then, so as I mentioned, the second part of this is really around deploying existing funds. So World Bank in Nigeria, for example, is redeploying some of their money to support companies during this period. CLASP, SNV, many others are trying to reallocate already allocated funds and technical assistance to support companies during these times. There's much more I could talk about. I think one other point that I would make before I hand it over to Jens who I hope will talk about the COVID relief summit that ARE, GOGLA are organizing next week, which will give some of that transparency that Mariama talked about earlier, hopefully to everybody in the sector. But one other point that I wanted to make was around company support versus consumer support. And what we've seen is so far is primarily financial support for companies who are delivering these energy access solutions. For good reason. If the companies don't exist, the consumers can't access the solutions. But initially, consumers, there was actually an uptick in their purchase of these types of energy access solutions once COVID hit. But now we're starting to see, based on new data that's being gathered by 60 decibels and GOGLA, an increasing pinch on the pocketbooks of consumers and their ability to pay for these types of services. So one other key element that really needs to stay in the spotlight as we move forward is not only ensuring that we're supporting the companies to make sure that we achieve SDG 7, but also that we're allowing consumers who are accessing these solutions not to lose them. We fought long and hard to bring decentralized renewable energy solutions to hundreds of millions of people over the last decade, and we need to make sure that those consumers during these difficult times can continue to afford those solutions. So with that, let me conclude my remarks, and thanks again to the Access Coalition.
Thank you so much, William, for that. In the interest of time, I'm going to go straight on to introducing Jens. Renisha, next slide, please. So Jens Jaeger leads the Policy and Business Development Department of the Alliance for Rural Electrification, ARE. This is a global business association representing more than 150 members in the decentralized renewable energy sector in developing countries. Jens, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you also, Will, for the presentation before. So indeed, as mentioned by William, there are a number of initiatives in the pipeline funding for energy access companies and potentially also CSOs, but it's somewhat scattered at the moment. So there was a question before asking where are the new or where are the relief grants going? Well, at the moment, they're not going to so many people. They're not going in many places. So in a nutshell, indeed, as Will mentioned, we have in ARE also conducted surveys with our members, and 80% of members said that they will struggle with liquidity in 3 to 6 months. Just a quick note on the ARE membership. Most of the members are actually SMEs. There are also some members that are bigger companies, but a lot of our members are SMEs that are working in off-grid renewables in emerging countries. So indeed, in terms of new relief efforts, there is the Energy Access Relief Fund, as Will mentioned. It's looking to close the first round, but the funding sources there are primarily concessional loans. So what our members, what our meetings with our members told us there was that basically that's not enough. The SMEs will not be able to benefit from that funding, and the CSOs the same. And we think, of course, that is a tremendous problem because SMEs are really the backbone of the sector. If there are no SMEs, that will kill the sector and kill all the progress that has been made over the last many years to provide energy access and services in rural communities. I think there was also a great publication last year from Power for All on the direct and indirect jobs created by off-grid renewables, and that's I think more than 100,000 direct jobs in just Kenya, Nigeria, and India alone, and more than 200,000 indirect jobs. So having said that, we are indeed together with Power for All and a number of other industry associations working on a grant relief fund, a grant relief mechanism, and that is not has not been funded fully yet. We will have hopefully an update on that in the forum we are organizing next, the summit we're organizing next week, together with Gokla and a few other partners. We cannot disclose at the moment, but there might be an update on that next week. In addition to that, so that is a few of the, let's say, global new funding sources. There have indeed been some more country-specific windows. So an example there is the React Kenya Relief Fund that supports companies active in clean cooking and solar home systems. Now, I think the initial funding window has closed end of June. So perhaps, well, not sure if there will be another one. Another example is in Nigeria. LEONE has opened a fund for $180 million to support the emergency response. So that's again project funding and not direct, let's say, grants to companies, but more project-based. There's also an open window from the Renewable Energy Performance Platform, REP, where companies and other stakeholders can ask for 3-month loans, 3-month loans essentially. And there are a number of TA initiatives such as the Get Invest technical assistance and the PFAN virtual clinics, as well as the Green People's Energy online trainings that are essentially targeted towards community organizations and CSOs. So on that note, what the preliminary conclusion is that if I was to be in the shoes of a civil society organization, I would probably focus on trying to acquire more project financing, because that's really where the main opportunities are at the moment. The relief mechanisms are not fully advanced yet. So there have been a number of initiatives, for example, the RBF scheme of SNB and NDEF in Mozambique that has pivoted. So offering, let's say, a relief window where companies can apply, called COVID Pay. Power Africa also opened a window to electrify health facilities across Africa. And then there have been a number of, let's say, more philanthropic funding sources and projects. An example is our member EDPR from Portugal has opened a few CSR projects in Mozambique and Nigeria. Rest for Africa, Italian association, has also pivoted a few electrification projects for clinics in Kenya, and they are actually looking for partners for that, so that might be something of interest. Then there are also certain competitions at the moment. For example, the Carbon Trust initiative called PRIO. I forgot what that stands for, but it's productive use. It's a productive use program, so it's supporting productive use projects and looking for applications at the moment, and a number of other such project financing opportunities. So in a nutshell, the direct relief funds, just pure grants, there are not a lot of them. We're working on it, but the short-term opportunity seems to be project financing. Now, on just a quick note about the photo I chose. This is from a member of ARE called Grid Alternatives, and this is from a rural health clinic project in Nepal, where the funding came from crowdfunding. So that is also, let's say, an example of an alternative financing source that certain members have tried to use, and in this case with quite big success. So I think people or organizations will have to be innovative in their project applications, in their way to try to acquire finance in this difficult time. I think everyone is struggling. And in terms of the specific relief mechanisms, we will indeed, as William also mentioned, there will be Energy Access COVID-19 Relief Summit next week, organized by ARE and GOGLA with support from Get Invest, where we will present a number of relief instruments and the status quo, and that will be people that are actually leading those initiatives, so will be more specific than what I can tell today. I think last thing I want to mention is that there is also an open survey at the moment from the Energizing Development Program, so ENDEF, where they are asking all companies, all civil society associations, basically stakeholders in the sector, on what they need and what the status quo is for them. So I would encourage everyone to respond to that survey as well, because that is supported by all the associations, and in a nutshell, we will use that for our advocacy towards donors too. So make your voice heard, and with that, I think I can hand it back over.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those insights, William and Jens. I hope it's been useful for all the members who have been participating. We're going to go to questions. I think we only have time for a couple of questions. And for the respondents, if you could keep your questions, your answers short to enable us to at least have two reflections. So one of the questions is around the survey, and it's from Marvin, and it says, what is the common trend of proven solutions for CSOs working to continue their activities even given the lockdowns? Jacqueline, this one is for you.
Thanks, Maimuna. I didn't quite get the question. If you don't mind, you can repeat again.
Problem. So sorry, the question is from the survey that Access conducted, what is the common trend of proven solutions for CSOs working to continue their activities, even given the lockdowns?
Oh, thanks again. Marvin, from the survey, we see that most of the CSOs are really affected, and there is no one-size-fits-all for the solutions. But what we can see from the survey is that most people, most organizations have somehow stopped their work, probably due to the travel restrictions, those working in the rural areas. We can also see that some solutions actually basically are on online engagements, and also sort of now working with Nexus CSOs, like some CSOs are now working with the health CSOs to see how they can complement their work. But generally, there is no one-size-fits-all for the solutions. It's something that across all the respondents were really struggling with at the time of the survey. But in case we get to hear more information from the CSOs, then we can always share with you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. A quick last question, and this is from Hezron Kajange. He says that funding is a challenge in many areas of development. How can CSOs help in utilizing funds or from local businesses through linking local communities with local funders? So it would be interesting for Jens to answer this as a representative of SMEs working on renewable energy.
Yeah, sure. So the question was that whether civil societies can help businesses apply to funds, or sorry,
yes, or linking them to local communities. Yeah, how can CSOs help with that?
So I think that that businesses and CSO can apply together, actually, especially in terms of the project funding opportunities, because for example, there is an open tender now from the Spanish agency called COFIDES, where it's a renewable energy program, and the way that program is structured is that you have to have private sector leads. Basically, a private sector company needs to lead the program and the fund. But there's also technical assistance part in that program, which is where the civil society associations or organizations, can come into play. And so, in my opinion, there's a good opportunity to co-apply for funding and help, let's say,
Thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions. Remember, if you have any other questions, that you can also always contact communications@access-coalition.org. Edith shared the email in the chat. There's a few people who had requested lists or links to the funds. Again, for this, Access will compile what has been shared today and share with the audience. So if you're interested and you're not a member of Access, please remember to contact Edith at communications@access-coalition.org. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and taking the time to be with us today and also sharing experiences through the polls. I also want to appreciate the speakers for taking time out of your day to share what's been going on in your country and your perspectives on funding. It's been very interesting to hear the different experiences, but also the needs that are there for the different levels of organizations, including private sector. I also want to thank the speakers, of course, who shared the financing options. And again, to remind everyone, you can contact Access for more details on what's been shared today. Thank you, everyone. The webinar is now closed. And take care and stay safe. Thank you.